maybe some other Night Elf players can tell you some other counters. Obviously, Dryads are definitely a good idea for counters on that, which would make the bats pretty useless. So I think the Orc player is basically, again, just playing defensively. He doesn't want to push just yet, and now he has to deal with some pressure being put on his expansion by a solo Demon Hunter with Orb of Venom and Boots of Speed on there. Also, Demon Hunter's opted for Staff of Teleportation to make that harass there very effective, able to take out all the peons there. He also brought a Wisp along, if you'll see that in the southern location, which he's going to use to build an Ancient of War to help push in that base. So Orc player just now sent some of his wolves in and saw the fairy dragons, and immediately as soon as he saw those fairy dragons, check out that bestiary. He's got a Troll Bat Rider coming out. He's going to start getting a few more Troll Bat Riders. Without the armor upgrades, a Bat Rider is really, really effective. One detonate's obviously going to kill one fairy dragon and do a good amount of damage to the other ones. So definitely a good idea there. Raiders, again, very effective versus fairy dragons to bring them to the ground. And also shamans so they can hit air. So, I mean, fairy dragons may be not necessarily a really good counter in this. You'll notice one thing that the Night Elf player is not doing. He still doesn't have his Beastmaster just came up. But he hasn't decided to opt for more healing scrolls. At this point in the game, you know that you're going to be up against Chainwave, and you know you're going to be up against Chain Lightning and Shockwave and the Lightning Shield. Blah. That's what I meant to say. He really needs to put those scrolls of healing on both of his heroes again. He doesn't quite have the resources for it now, but maybe making one or two less fairy dragons and refortifying your scrolls of healing would have been a good option for you there, I think. To not have scrolls of healing versus Chainwave at almost any point in the game is bad, but now that the Orc player has been able to level up his heroes, he's got level 2 Chain Lightning and level 2 Shockwave. It's going to be very difficult to deal with that without scrolls of healing. It's going to be another fight here. How you're going to see how good the bats are going to work and how bad it is to not have scrolls of healing up here in a second. So let's go over that. Another note that the Orc player decides to write me here, that Jakar has told me, is to try to keep mana pots on both your heroes at all times. This is the second potion of greater mana, I think, that this Torn Chieftain has gotten. So he's going to be able to spam that Shockwave. If you hold alt, you're going to see a lot of those Night Elf units in red, and the Shamans are in really, really good position here. They're not necessarily focus firing on individual units here, but eventually they do start to put some pressure on the Night Elf heroes. Shockwave just decimating all these Druids of Talon. I just saw 4 dots falling, and Cyclone used to try to keep out the DPS melee units and range units, that Forest Troll Berserkers, and the Raiders, to try to knock out the control there. Now we're going to see some ensnare going off on the Fairy Dragons and Druids of the Talon. Very key move for this Orc player to do is to chase, because the Night Elf player has gotten a lot of low HP units out, and he's going to be able to refortify those with just Moonwells relatively easily. Just missed the ensnare there on that Fairy Dragon's low HP there, but really good move here. Just want to use Purge to get rid of Fairy Fire as soon as possible, especially on your units, because it lasts a lot longer. Orc player, there's that Ancient of War at the Orc player's expansion spot there on the southern position. He's going to bring his army to try to take it out, but before he does, I think the Night Elf player actually forces a cancel on both these towers here, or actually, I don't think the Orc player actually cancels them. I think he just gets the kill and wastes the resources on it. I'm not sure on that. You guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong. Good idea to use his peons to build the towers, though, because that just kind of fortifies his expansion here. And it basically made his peons kind of invulnerable for a little bit on those, while they're building anyway, to that Ancient of War there. So. Alright, I went over the mana pots on both the heroes. He goes for the bats. Bats are also a really good idea. If a Night Elf player is going Druids of the Talon and he's going to have those Ancients of Wind up, an ideal add-on to that is the Chimera Roost. So you might have to deal with Chimeras, or Chimeras, whatever you call them, a little bit later. So refortifying army with a good amount of bats is a good idea, or at least a good amount of type of ranged DPS that you're going to be able to deal with those Chimeras. Definitely a good idea. He's actually upgrading the armor on his Troll Bat Riders. This is basically in case he has to deal with the other counter to Bat Riders, which sometimes works pretty effectively, but only when their armor's upgraded too, is the Hippogriff Riders, which also come out of that Ancient of Wind. Or just the actual Hippogriff, not the Riders. The Riders are when the archers are mounted on. So just regular Hippogriffs counter Orc Air pretty well. but not necessarily Bat Riders unless they have the armor upgrades. A good amount of armor upgrades too, probably 1 or 2, so definitely worry about that. They do normal damage, which does actually it just does regular damage to Bat Riders. So I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a good enough player. I'm not sure of their counters, so sorry about that misinformation there, guys. The inovative player has opted out at this late point in the game to go for just Mass Fairy Dragons. Probably not that great of an idea at this point, knowing that he's going to have to deal with bats. He hasn't gotten any armor upgrades on those Fairy Dragons, and unless he has some way of stopping those bats from exploding, the Orc player doesn't even need to bring his army in to take out the Night Elf player's army. He just needs to send in a few bats and basically kill all those Fairy Dragons. He also opted to try to creep a little bit with his Fairy Dragons, although he does have Full Moon Well, so he's going to be able to rejuvenate them pretty quick. Hope he opts for that. We'll see what happens there. He actually hasn't opted to use the Moonwells on him yet. Let's see. I'm still watching him, see if he does that. Oh, he hasn't done it, and the Bat Riders are coming in. So those low HP Fairy Dragons took some extra damage from that. That was detonated. At least 3 or 4 Fairy Dragons died. Now we have a few in the red, too. We only have 4 Fairy Dragons left. Pretty much good game now for the Night Elf. It's been that way for a little bit while. He does have some healing pots on his heroes. His heroes are going to be a little bit of a threat here, and he started to pump out the Hippogriff Riders, but at this point it's kind of a loss, or the Hippogriffs is kind of a lost cause. He brings both his heroes in here, and he's trying to focus fire on this Farseer, which has a Scroll of Town Portal and a Scroll of Healing. He really isn't really much of a threat, or much of a really good target, but again, Foreign Chieftain's not even a good target, so both these heroes now fortified really well, both level 5, yep, so now we're going to have level 3 Chain Lightning and Shockwave to deal with. Again, not something the Night Elf player is going to be able to deal with very effectively. He does use Mana Burn to try to negate all the use of Chain Lightning and Shockwave, which he has done successfully. The Orc player is now able not to do that, but he does have a Mana Pot on both his heroes, so easy counter there. Alright, game is over. Let's talk about it just for a minute. I did look up some information about immolation from the Battle.net website. The immolation effects. Basically, immolation, which is the Demon Hunter's ability and kind of can be compared to Lightning Shield, at level 3 does 20 damage a second, for however long the Demon Hunter has his ability on. Lightning Shield, right by itself, at tier 2, not being having a level 3 ability on a hero, lasts for 20 seconds, hits grounds, friends, and enemy units, and does 20 damage a second. So if left alone, and the units are all next to each other and just sits there, the Lightning Shield will deal a total of 400 damage, I guess not taking into account armor or anything like that.